Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole has said that the population has outgrown policing resources and that the geographical spread has outgrown their infrastructure. How does this impact on the work of police dealing with cases is the question that we're asking, especially after the crime statistics, quarterly crime statistics were released recently. We've heard the police minister saying that COVID-19 and the various lockdowns has skewed what we see as the rising numbers in contact crimes, for instance. Let's speak about this more with Lesiba Thobakgale, who is the South African Policing Union Spokesperson. We're also joined by crime and policing expert Eldred de Klerk. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening.
Let me start with you, Mr. Thobakgale. The police minister, for instance, is saying that we cannot compare the same period of this year and last year because, as I mentioned, he says it's skewed and abnormal crime trends were caused by different levels of lockdowns. What do you believe is the holistic picture in comparing the 2021 and 2022 crime figures to the so-called normal period 2 years ago where there was no lockdown then?
Thank you so much for having us tonight. From our side, we strongly do not believe that the police minister should hide behind lockdown because criminals, they are never on holiday. And lockdown cannot be utilized as an excuse for crime to be so high. And this is clearly informed by interventions that were introduced, and us as a union, because we are a stakeholder within SABC, we have concluded an agreement in 2020 which speaks to restructuring. And that was clearly informed by that the structure of SABC is bloated on top, and that restructuring process, it seeks to take all those resources that are bloated on top, because when you look at the compensation that is being paid for those that are there on top, and we refer to the national office and the divisions, and it escalating those resources down to the police station level, because that is where policing is happening. And that agreement, as we speak today, it has not been implemented because the minister himself, he's holding it at ransom. And if that agreement was implemented, we strongly believe that a picture that we will be having there, it would be a different picture, because whether lockdown is there or there is no lockdown, then it would ensure that we've got more boots on the ground. And also the issue of budget. We strongly believe that when other departments, their budget was cut, we strongly believe that the police minister, he was supposed to have fought for the budget of SABC not to be cut like the rest of other departments, because we are dealing with the safety and security of the inhabitants of the Republic and their property. So we are saying that any excuse that is being utilized, we cannot allow it. We cannot even accede to it, because the police minister is the one who releases those steps. And he knew what was happening.
What are your thoughts? I mean, what the minister is saying here is that, for instance, when we talk about murder, the increase of 62% when compared with the 2019-2020 period is really an increase of only 6.7%, and that the 72.4% increase in rape is only 2.8% and compared to what he calls a normal period before lockdown. The lived experience of South Africans, though, does it reflect these various ways of flipping the figures? You've just heard what Sapu has to say about this. Do you agree with these sentiments that we're not prioritizing properly?
Well, there's two parts to this question. Yes, it is a question of priority, and I think Sapu has outlined the other part of the equation, and that is, how are we utilizing existing police resources? So when it comes to the lockdown period, for example, it wasn't only the police that should have responded. We also had military on the ground. What impact did that have? We had other departments out there. We had health departments, we had social welfare. So it actually shows a deficit in interdepartmental cooperation and a coherent strategy from the whole of government in its endeavors to protect us as citizens and to keep us safe and secure. And I think I want to come back to the other part of the equation. Is the excuse then that, one, we're going to need more police officers going forward? Because there I agree with Sapu. If we are going to restructure, let's fire the 200 generals we have and let's release that money to train, employ, and equip another 20,000 constables over the next 2 years, for example. Is it a question of how we're utilizing our human capital? Where are officers deployed? What are they doing when they are there? And what's the state of leadership within the South African Police Service? Is it a question of the changing nature of crime and violence? We don't know this. There's not enough information in what's been released to the public for us to give a thorough analysis about this. Is it a question that the police is not fit to respond to the increased globalization and the impact of the post-industrial revolution and technology, for example, how they're dealing with issues of migration, transnational organized crime? So all of these are impacting the police and actually making sure that it's highlighting deficits within the policing response.
I'm going to come to you, Mr. Thobakgale, in just a moment, but I'd like to get you to continue on this train of thought, Mr. de Klerk, because you have mentioned, for instance, technological advancements and just speaking about how the trends, the police are keeping up with this, if at all. The issue of information. In the past, political parties would complain that we're not getting the crime statistics often enough. Now when we're getting them, people say it's not a clear, a picture of what is actually happening on the ground. What are we to believe as members of the public?
Well, figures in itself doesn't show police effectiveness. It's because we preoccupied with whether things are going up or down as opposed to how effective the police is. That's one measure of police effectiveness. What it doesn't say is what have we learned and what are we looking to prevent? And what efforts are we putting in place, given the fact that what we've learned from these figures. So quarterly, annually, it seems to make no difference in the routine police activities. And in this, unions like SAPO has a big role to play. A few years ago, SAPO had a conference, for example, where they considered things like how the decriminalization of cannabis is going to impact police, the police as an institution, and crime and violence in South Africa. Has SAPS even taken this up? The minister was there. I don't see any reflection in the work of SAPS where they are learning. Another part of that was, for example, key populations, prostitution, and all of those things. SAPO as a union considers this as a conference, invites the police, and we don't see how the police is changing to meet the changing nature.
So, Mr. Thobakgale, let's talk about this, your suggestions and how you engage with the police's top brass. What is hindering it? Part of it that you've pointed out as problematic is what you see as a fighting of two bulls, the police minister and his commissioner. Is this affecting how efficacy then trickles down and some of these important suggestions falling by the wayside?
That is definitely true. It goes without doubt, because we have always maintained that when two bulls are fighting, the grass will suffer. The crime statistics that were released in this quarter are a clear reflection. Remember, SABC is a militarized organization whereby leadership is very, very important. And the fight between the Minister of Police and the National Commissioner is really having a negative impact in terms of how things should unfold. And what we alluded to in terms of that restructuring, it would have assisted, and because our members would be knowing that they've got capacity even down there, at least then we would be moving one step at the right direction. And further to that, we strongly believe that politics killed policing, because of when you look at the political influence and political where you find that there is always political interference in terms of towards policing, that in itself, it makes policing not to achieve the objectives that they have to achieve in terms of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And further to that, our crime intelligence, it is one of our important divisions, which if crime intelligence does not have somebody who is appointed there, somebody who has a plan to see how things would unfold, then it will be in disarray. And as we speak, we don't have a divisional commissioner appointed to lead crime intelligence, because crime intelligence, they are our ears and they are our eyes to tell and inform management to say, this is coming, let us deal with it even before it could come. So now we've got somebody who is acting, and we are referring to somebody who failed at the Western Cape and they come and they lead the whole division of crime intelligence in the whole country. What do we call that? So those are some of the issues that we see. They are really impacting negatively, and also definitely, the issue of lack of leadership and the fight between the minister and the national commissioner, and where the president is just folding his hands. He's not doing anything about it, because we wrote to his office for his intervention because he employed both of them.
All right. So, Mr. de Klerk, if we're saying we're not using the resources that we have adequately, what should we be doing? And I'm reflecting against this press statement that's just been released by the NAT Joint Committee, talking about threats, possible threats of disruption, reflecting on the criticism against the police at the past couple of weeks, unrest. What should we be focusing on?
Well, I think all of this actually points and starts to suggest that we are not aware of the actual state of policing in South Africa. So it's time that we have an honest conversation about that. We understand that the police is in disarray. It's going around like a headless chicken, and it needs critical direction on a strategic level. And that needs to come from the Minister of Police, from Cabinet, and the Presidency. So we do need a fuller understanding of the current existing state of policing. We also do need to follow through, and this is where the unions and others are critically important, in determining what emerging competencies are needed for a new South African police that can police within the 21st century and police in a developmental state with emerging technology and in a globalized environment. We really do need that, and that and urgently needs to be on our agenda. The last thing we need to do is what's the state of our police leadership? And what is their competencies? Are they fit for purpose? Are they in the right positions? Lesiba mentioned the fact that we don't have a divisional commissioner of intelligence, of crime intelligence within SABC. The commissioner, that particular role, is not a rank, it's a role and it's a designation. You don't need to be a general to be a commissioner, because the lowest level of responsibility for commissioner is at a station level. And we've devalued that position of commissioner at a station level so much so that nobody wants to be it. And it's actually one without authority, and it's one without accountability. So we need to revisit this idea of where's our police leadership are they competent for the job at hand? What exactly is the job at hand, and how are we going to meet the task going forward?
Mr. Thobakgale, without individualizing the problem, there have been, there's been criticism about the recent cabinet changes, saying that given the fact that the police themselves failed in arresting the situation we're confronted with, that changes are definitely needed. As you've just heard what Mr. de Klerk is saying, we don't have a true reflection of what is actually going on with police, the state of policing. If you were to give recommendations on these radical changes that are needed, what would they be?
From our side, we need to be frank about the status of policing within our country, because looking at the issues of crime stats, when you look at the CTAs and the CPAs, meaning that when you assess the trends and also the threats thereof, you are able to tell every day. That assessment is done daily. So we strongly believe that if that is done frankly, we can really look and also not only release the stats. After the stats have informed us to say, this is our situation, we come with interventions immediately that would deal and cap, because policing has to be proactive instead of it being reactive, because reactive policing, it is quite a problem. Before that, one has to try by all means in order to be proactive rather than being reactive.
Okay,
and in terms of leadership, it is our position that we strongly believe that the Minister of Policy, the Minister of Police did not assist us. We strongly believe that he should step aside because he failed in his responsibility. All he did, he interfered in policing even where he was not supposed to do it.
Thank you so much to both of you for your time. Lesiba Thobakgale, South African Policing Union Spokesperson, as well as crime and policing expert Eldred de Klerk. Thank you very much.